Sami Jamfi is here and represents the NDC. Can you articulate for us what your real concerns are about these rather, not novel, but they appear laudable, proposals for reform in our election process? Because we know if elections close at 5 or beyond that, that is where the problems begin, the violence and all of that. And they're saying close at 3. And we think that we have done the 2020 elections in such a way that we can assure ourselves that we can close at 3. And then we count quickly and everything gets packed together, so there's no problem. Why are you not in support of that? Why are you not in support of continuous registration of voters when the law actually provides for? In fact, the law was made when you were in government.
Thank you for the opportunity, and good morning to my colleague panelists and our cherished viewers. I hope I will get the opportunity to also respond to the so-called achievements that the EC has urged us to celebrate. But let me, first of all, answer your question, which has to do with our position on the proposed reforms. And to start with, let me make the point that we do not disagree with the EC on all the proposals. We've seen the communique that was issued at the end of the 2-day workshop. And I should say that some of the proposals in there are laudable. For example, the proposal to reduce the filing fee of female and persons with disability, candidates by 50%. It's a laudable one that the NDC will support any day, any time. Also, the proposal to introduce technology in the voter register exhibition process through a short code system, whilst at the same time engaging in the periodic voter register exhibition exercises we've been doing over the years, is also a laudable one. There's been other proposals about election security and how we can improve that and forestall some of the unfortunate happenings that happened in the 2020 elections that led to the death of 8 Ghanaians. All these are laudable proposals. So it's not as if the NDC is against everything the EC is putting forward. But there are some of the proposals that we find problematic and untenable, and we would want the EC to have a second look at. The first one has to do with the proposal to close polls at 3 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. Samson, like the EC chairperson herself noted in a speech at the 2-day workshop, if a system is not broken, you don't fix it. Reforms are formulated and implemented to address challenges. Our position is that currently, the 5 p.m. closure time for polls in elections in this country poses no problems for our electoral system. Since 92 till now, polls have always, till 2020, polls have always closed at 5 p.m. And that has worked perfectly. So why change a system that has worked perfectly without any challenges? My sister Rhoda from Kudio made a point that there's been some security concerns about elections dragging into the night in some polling stations. But if you realize carefully, for this 2020 election, Samson, we did not have security issues of cases of violence and lawlessness recorded at polling stations. Most of the state-sponsored violence that claimed the lives of 8 innocent Ghanaians happened at the constituency coalition level and not at polling stations. I don't recall we having any cases of violence or any negative happenings at polling stations as far as the 2020 elections was concerned. Secondly, she made a suggestion that, if we can divide polling stations and reduce the number of voters at polling stations, it will become feasible for us to implement this new proposal of closing polls at 3. But my sister will have to take into consideration the burden that that proposal will impose on political parties. Because already we have about 38,000 polling stations in this country. That means that political parties will have to employ, or if you like, recruit polling agents, sometimes 2 polling agents or 3 for all these polling stations. And so if you're going to increase the number, that means more cost for political parties. We need to think about that. Now, our main reasons for opposing this recommendation or proposal is that in this country, normally, or the system we have is that electoral materials are delivered to polling stations on the day of elections. And usually, we record delays in the delivery of these electoral materials, even in the capital cities, like Accra. You have situations where polls delay until 9 a.m. in some polling stations, 10 a.m., 11 a.m.
But this was not a problem this time.
It was a problem this time. In fact, I mean, we had media reports of polling stations, even in Accra, where polls delayed until 10 a.m., until 9 a.m. Okay, again, sometimes even when the materials are delivered, and you know that in some districts and other parts of the country, if you look at the geography of this country, the materials have to be transported sometimes across river bodies. Okay, like if you go to the Farm Plains, for example, before the materials can be moved from the district police stations where they are kept on the eve of the elections to the polling stations or the voting centers, and they are usually delayed. Sometimes even when they are delivered, you realize that some of the materials are not there. They tell you that there is no validation stamp, and that delays the process. Sometimes there are technical challenges, like BVRs or BVDs developing faults, and technicians have to be called in, or the machines have to be replaced and all that, which all delay the process. So why change this current 5 p.m. arrangement for the closure of polls, which has worked perfectly without any challenges, okay, and go for this new arrangement, which is only going to put pressure on the Electoral Commission and voters? Bear in mind that unlike other countries, in Ghana, on election days are not holidays. And sometimes people have to go to work, depending on the nature of work people do, before they go and vote. In rural areas, sometimes people have to go to the farms before they come and vote. Okay, it is not true that in the 2020 elections we did not have long queues. I saw long queues in many parts of Accra and other parts of the country. Okay, and sometimes people who don't want to go and join the long queues wait to go to the polling stations after 2, 3 p.m. where the queues would have, gone down. So we are saying that the current 5 p.m. arrangement is a good arrangement. Going for this new proposal of let's close polls at 3 will only impose unnecessary pressure on the EC and voters. I tell you, for example, as political parties, maybe could you, when they engage us on this proposal, we will share some of these things with them. Sometimes you have to, as a political party, get pickups, the tricycles, motorcycles, to transport people from their rural communities to voting centers to vote. Or else you suffer as a political party. We do that.
So what? All these parties that met for this 2-day retreat were unaware of these things you are mentioning?
Well, you see, the truth of the matter is that apart from the MPP that participated in this 2-day workshop, the other political parties don't normally go through what a political party like the NDC goes through relative to elections. The kind of things we do in the organization of elections cannot be compared to some of what some of these other political parties do. You are talking about political parties that did not even participate in the elections. Of course, the PPP, the PNCs, the CPP, we respect, they've been around for a long time. We've worked with them, APC and all that. But political parties like UDS, United Love Party, ULP, GMP, PPP, IPS, and all that. These are not parties which even participated in the elections. And so if they are the ones assessing the last election they did not participate in, and they are considering reform proposals on same, then obviously some of these challenges we are raising will be lost on them. But these challenges are worth considering. And so we are saying on this proposal that this current arrangement is not broken and doesn't require any fixing. Secondly, the EC has made a proposal to do away with the periodic mass registration, voter registration exercises we do, and replace it with continuous registration. That is where the problem lies. Because you see, like Rhoda said, continuous registration is not a new phenomenon. It's already provided for under our electoral processes. And in fact, there's been a court ruling to that effect that Ghanaians are entitled to be registered at any time they turn 18 or once they are qualified to be registered as voters. So the EC is supposed to put in place measures to ensure that there is continuous registration. But that continuous registration cannot be a substitute for the periodic mass registration that we do. The reason is that with continuous registration, you do that at the district offices of the EC. And so all eligible voters desirous of registering will have to travel from their communities to the district capital. Again, that system is an online system that cannot take too much pressure. And so if you're having a lot of people moving there, you're going to have challenges. Again, because of the issues that rose, challenges that we have in elections in this country, because we cannot trust the EC and trust ourselves as political parties, you require the presence of political party agents during registration. And so if you want to totally scrap periodic mass registration and replace that with continuous registration, then political parties will have to employ agents and place them at district offices of the EC in perpetuity. That clearly is not sustainable. So, brilliant proposal is already provided for under our electoral system, but don't replace it or don't substitute it for the periodic mass registration that we do. Then now they are talking about a very dangerous proposal, validation of voters during exhibition. That during voter exhibition, which is poorly patronized in this country, you know that, I'm not sure that, I mean, how many Ghanaians patronize voter exhibition in this country? Now the EC is saying that voters will have to go for and check their details in the register during exhibition and indicate their willingness to vote on the election day before they can vote. So now you will not be allowed to vote just because your name is in the register, but you will have to go and indicate your willingness to vote. This is a proposal they have tabled that we think is also problematic.
The proposal specific says, introduce an all year round voter exhibition exercise through the use of technology, SMS short code. Additionally, maintain the periodic mass verification at exhibition centers.
Which is fantastic. But you come down, I'm sure you're reading from the communique.
Yes, put in place a cut of time.
The next one. The next one after that, immediately after that.
The next one is about filing.
Still under exhibition. Maybe I will find it and read it for you.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you look at that, it does suggest that you may have misunderstood.
Okay, so exhibition. So one, validation of voters during exhibition to indicate that voters will be available for the impending elections. That validation proposal is what I'm saying is problematic. Then now, come again?
Okay,
I can show that to you.
Using the summary. If you are using the summary.
Maybe this can help you. You can use my phone and then you can locate it on yours. Yeah. Then apart from that, they've spoken about defining the campaign period, the period allowed for campaigns by a political party. And they are saying that they are now going to restrict campaigning to the period after the filing of nominations to election day. That is problematic because if you look at our election rules, that is only, you're talking about 3 months. So why will political parties...
So can you confirm that's the communique?
Oh, that's the communique. This is what your producer sent to me. I will confirm it with you when I finish. Okay, so political parties elect their presidential candidates 2 years before elections. Parliamentary candidates sometimes 2 years or 1 year before the general elections. And they are supposed to wait and only commence campaigning after filing of nominations. That clearly is not workable. Okay, then this proposal to restrict data entry at the constituency collation level only, okay, would have been okay in other jurisdictions. But in our context, okay, where you cannot have the security measures that are required for such a system to prevent hacking and all that, it is dangerous. And so we would want to go with a system that we've always used in elections in this country.
Yeah, I've seen
where
it comes under another.
Exactly. Where collation is done at the constituency level, but at the national level, where the returning officer.
These parts which you are mentioning, it's actually for further deliberation.
Yeah, further deliberation, but it's one of the proposals they've made, and we will state our position as I've articulated here on that when we are given the opportunity.
So once again, you are stating your position outside of the meeting. That is sort of, you know, has the legal, the cloth of,
so that has to do with
legality.
Yeah.
And you are stating outside of that. You were not present to share your disagreement, which may have informed, you know, the outcome. And once again, there's for further deliberation, and you are not going to attend that one too?
You see, I'll just in 1 minute, I will address our boycott. But let me end by making the point on the proposals they put forward, that there are other serious challenges that bedeviled the last year's election that we were expecting that the EC will consider, you know, improving on in the next general elections. And that has to do
a list. How many?
For example, ensuring that the standard voting impasse that we have always used in previous elections and that are used in other jurisdictions are stipulated in our election regulations and strictly adhered to by the EC. Because the use of the office, you know, stamps as voting pass in last year's elections did not help. And in fact, largely accounted for the unprecedented rejected ballots, you know, cases that we recorded, over 300,000.
Number two, you are giving a list.
Number two, we've spoken about strict adherence to the Form 8, that's the statement of pool, what we call pink sheet template, provided for in our election regulations, which makes room for the number of persons who vote using the BVD to be recorded, to check rigging like multiple voting, impersonation and all that, and to preserve the inherent ballot accounting system in, on the face of the pink sheet. That will have to be adhered to. Then thirdly, enhancing political parties, the involvement of political parties in the printing and distribution chain of ballot papers. In last year's election, we saw the EC over printing ballot papers for regions like Ashanti region by over 1 million. Our checks show that some of these ballot papers were not destroyed, and that is why on election day in some polling stations in the Ashanti region and other MPP strongholds, people were caught with authentic, not fake, authentic ballot papers already thumb-printed for candidate Akufo-Addo with the EC yellow validation stamp, which is a material that only the EC has custody of. We will have to check that. And then finally, with regards to election security, we are proposing that we revert to the time-tested election security arrangement where political actors step aside from the DISEX and the MISEX and allow the police acting together with the district EC officers to handle election security, and that there should be minimum or no involvement of the military or national security.
Thank you.
But on IPAC,
you obviously will regret your absence.
Not at all. You see, now let me quickly deal with it. You see, IPAC was established in 1994 for a purpose. That purpose is for IPAC to be a platform where the EC engages political parties, seeks their opinions.
It's advisory.
It's advisory, but that is where the EC strives to build consensus with political parties and ensure their participation in the electoral system. And through IPAC, we have achieved a lot of electoral reforms over the years with the active participation of the NDC. So we believe in the IPAC arrangement. But the bastardization of that novel, or if you like, revered body by the current leadership of the EC, okay, and by bastardization, I'm talking about the introduction of many mushroom political parties who have no offices in this country, don't participate in elections, but who are always invited by the EC, given the same voting rights as the NDC and the MPP, and who only come for IPAC meetings to heckle and to do the bidding of the EC and the MPP. That arrangement is defeating the very purpose for which IPAC was established. Are you saying
that those who attended this IPAC, there are some that previously were not invited to IPAC meetings?
No, they've been invited to IPAC meeting under the leadership of Madame G. Mensah to do, for example,
my question.
Yes.
These parties that attended this particular IPAC meeting are parties that previously were not invited to IPAC meetings?
Before the June 18 ouster of Charlotte Osei and her deputies, we had never seen a political party like UDS at any IPAC meeting, or ULP, and some of these mushroom political parties who are now invited to IPAC meetings. They have the same voting rights as the NDC. They come to heckle, muddy the waters and all that, and no meaningful deliberations take place. Secondly, the hostile and dictatorial posture that the current leadership of the EC has adopted towards the NDC. Something you have a situation where
you are invited to this meeting,
but you have
you're invited to
a meeting which is supposed to build consensus.
Yes,
a meeting which is supposed to seek your views,
right? But
which always turn out to be an information sharing platform, where you are told that look, you can only advise.
Is that what happened in this meeting? It was only information.
That is what has happened in all IPAC meetings the NDC has attended under the leadership of Madame G. Mensah.
Thank you. Now
we are saying that posture will have to be reviewed, the current arrangement will have to be reviewed. You see,
Dr. Kweku, please forgive me, but just hold on for a minute. Kweku, no, let me come to you. I want to come to you before I go to Dr. Kweku. First, one of the major planks of the NDC's argument is about the mushrooming parties. Parties that don't deserve recognition as parties that are invited. And you just heard him, the claim that it is under this regime, as in the EC, that some of them are being invited to do
and giving the same voting rights,
the EC's bidding, and giving the same voting right. Has there ever been a time when the MPP and NDC have, higher voting rights than all others?
For example, under Dr. Farijan, when a committee was put together to work on the new biometric register, the MPP had one representation on that committee, the NDC had one, and all the smaller political parties were given one. Now, a case can be made for that to be increased, but at least you saw an equitable, proportionate representation arrangement. Okay, that reflected the strength of...
What has changed?
Currently, Ekweadonko's party or this UDS party, IPS, they are treated the same way as the NDC and the MPP.
You are not saying that you were treated differently earlier, that if it comes to voting, one party was giving more votes than the other?
No, on key issues like the register and all that.
That does not happen.
That happens under Farijan. We were not seeing...
NDC under Farijan, NDC and MPP were giving more votes than the other parties?
In fact, in most cases, decision-making at IPAC was done on consensus basis. But currently, when the EC puts forward the proposal and they hear our side,
they subject it
to a vote.
I was actually asking a quick question.